Tell me what your life was like before you died.
I was at work. I was a community nurse, and I slipped on ice, which can be a very simple thing. However, I shot up in the air and came down head first. I was knocked out immediately. I was probably unconscious, though, for a good 10 minutes at least. And what happened was it seemed very quick, but left me feeling complete change in my life. It was very profound, even though it was short-lived. And I probably didn't see everything there was to see over there, but I saw enough to really change things for me. So suddenly I was aware of being in quite a dark place, but I could see without my eyes and I could hear without my ears. It was just the experience of being in this place where it was fairly dark and knowing. I looked around and I thought, where am I? And then it was a knowing of, oh, I'm here. And then no thoughts, just this feeling of very similar to what you would think it would be like if the air comes out of a balloon. There was just this, and suddenly I was out of my body, no longer contained, but just it was a complete feeling of just expansion. And I experienced myself as pure consciousness flowing, just this gentle flowing, and knowing that all was well. As I was in this flow, suddenly I could just feel everything that was floating just expand in every direction. So it was kind of like just becoming a part of everything that was around me, just a flow. And there was no end to it. It just went on and on. And then the thought that I had was, wow, the way I felt, I thought I could just stay here forever and I wouldn't need anything else. And as a human, that's really hard to imagine. How could you feel in a way that you would not need anything else? I thought I could just stay here forever. And I just continued in this gentle flow, and I felt so good. And I knew immediately that it was an overwhelming feeling of love. It was just intense and everywhere, and it was me. So as I stayed in that state and just felt perfect and kind of knew that this would be fine, just to be right there in that state forever. Suddenly this thought came to me, what about your daughters? You know, they still need me. And the feeling of, yeah, they do. And there was no feeling of argument or feeling of, no, please, you know, I want to stay here. It was just a perfect feeling of, yeah, okay, I'll just go back. And then it was a feeling of just springing back and going back into my body and feeling the density again, just feeling complete enclosure. With that, I wasn't feeling any discomfort until suddenly the darkness just became kind of light. It was like the sunlight started to come through my eyelids again. And then I opened my eyes and was back in pretty much distress at that time. It was very dark, but still with a seeing. So a lot of people have the experience of seeing their loved ones and seeing all kinds of things. I just experienced complete and total oneness with everything. And I just became everything. And pure love, total and complete pure love, in feeling that was so intense and so perfect. Imagine, needed nothing else ever again, nothing else. The only message that I took fully and completely and totally was that we are pure love at our core, and this pure love is our spirit. And our spirit is kind of like a cup of the universe that gets dumped into our body. And this perfect cup then joins with our human form, and everything is dulled down in the sense of how we feel, our feeling of love. But the essence of me, who I feel here, is the same as who I felt out there, just not as intense. It was still on the ice. I couldn't form words. I couldn't move at first, and my feet were stuck over my shoulder. My purse lodged under me, and it kept my feet from falling back down. So all I could do is scream the thought in my head, feet go down. I was trying to make that happen with verbal cues. And finally I did get my feet down, but I was not getting very much oxygen when my feet were up there. It was like I was squishing my chest, so there wasn't a lot of oxygen. And I had a long road to recovery after that. A head injury can be a pretty difficult thing to go through, and they told me that I was disabled from there on in. I would be disabled, and I just needed to accept that. And so I lost my nursing career. My life changed tremendously. and significantly. And I was off work for quite a while. And literally, I could stand in the kitchen and my daughter would say, "Could you put some toast in the toaster for me?" And I would turn and go 2 steps and I would forget where I had gone. I would forget what I was going for. I would be speaking to someone and I had what I called this blank screen come down. The conversation was just suddenly gone. Didn't know what we were talking about. It was rough. It was really rough. And I didn't get a lot of confidence from the medical field that it would be okay. But I knew it would be okay. And I was able to access my spiritual self, my soul, in ways that were just pure wisdom. And I could be as normal as can be with my spiritual self. It was just my physical self that was damaged. And it really gave me a tremendous insight into the 3 principles. And consciousness is actually everything. We have a personal consciousness and there's also a universal consciousness. So people often have a little trouble fitting that into the human mind. What can be a mind or a human consciousness and a universal consciousness? And this is where my new passion lies. The energy, because we're energy from head to toe. Everything about us is energy, in the form and the formless that we are, in our body and in our soul that lives inside of us. So this consciousness is also energy, which is everywhere. With our human brain, we have a consciousness that we go through our life with. However, this universal consciousness, or our soul consciousness, our spirit, is so much bigger and so much more vast. And it's what I experienced when I was out there, this universal consciousness. It's wisdom, it's divinity. It's actually what many people think of as God. Many people think of God as someone, a little man who sits up in the sky. For me, I don't see it as that. I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. So I don't follow any religious doctrine, which is a scary thing for people. Often people have to believe things that are very frightening. They have to behave in certain ways. However, this God that I see, the energy, the consciousness that is everything, that is divine and wisdom, it is so magnificent, and it's inside of every one of us, this energy, this consciousness. And it gives us the ability to be much wiser than we could ever really understand until we learn to feel our spirit and understand it. With this beautiful consciousness, most humans on the earth don't know a lot about it. They don't understand how magnificent they truly are and the capabilities they have when they start to let this energy flow through them and hear the wisdom that comes from our soul, hear the wisdom that comes from this divinity, the God in us. And it's something that, quite honestly, I have just learned to appreciate and to capitalize on in a very big way. So I don't feel I'm that much ahead of anybody who might understand or not understand it. I do feel that I have the tremendous blessing of being able to share with people how to understand this soul and what it can do for your life and for you as a human being. And that feels pretty special. In many ways, it's very difficult to know anything for sure, but I think came upon me to change my life. I could not go on. I don't believe I would be here today if I was still on that hamster wheel. It was way too stressful, and my body would just not have carried on. I would be gone. Well, it did take me a long time to recover, so the changes did not come for quite a while. I would say it was a good 10 years before I got some of the benefits of what had happened to me. I think the changes are that I understand so deeply and intensely the spiritual side of who we are. And I'm probably clearer on that than I am on the human side of who we are. I enjoy the spiritual side of me so much more than the human side of me. So my struggle is to try to bring those two things into a much better alignment, into living a life which is rounded with both of those things, the human and the spirit, equally feeling good about both of those things. As a human, we suffer so much. And that's how I spent most of my life, thinking and believing the thoughts that I had meant something, when most of the thoughts that we have as our human brain or our ego throws at us, most of those thoughts do not even need to have us pay attention to them. That is a big eye-opener for many people, because most people believe if they have a thought, it must mean something. However, what happens in our human ways is this: We have a thought, and then we immediately attach an emotion to it, and then we think there's an action that's required. None of that is true. Just because you have a thought, you don't need to allow an emotion to attach to it, and you don't need to have a behavior follow that. My immediate family, my daughters and my husband, they didn't buy into it at first. They did not see what I was seeing. They thought it was very interesting, but they couldn't quite get their head wrapped around it. Now, my daughters are so appreciative of it because it's changed their life too. The understanding that they no longer have to believe that they have a war inside. Well, outside my immediate family, my husband and children, was my brothers and sisters, and it wasn't very cool for them. They're university professors and they're very intellectual people, so they did not think this made much sense. And to this day, one sister kind of likes it, one doesn't. My brother just fell in love with my book, and he said, I have learned more from this book about life than anybody has ever been able to tell me. And it was just simple things that you and I are talking about today. And so it changed his life. Living a good life is living your own happiness, because that's very hard to do. Very often we think when the people around us are happy that we need to live that life. Truly digging inside yourself and finding what your happiness is, what makes your soul sing. My soul has told me for years I've created peace for people. Now my purpose is to create harmony. I think we are here to evolve our soul. I think that's our purpose. I think that's our life purpose. So if we're here to evolve our soul, we have to find what brings us joy. As soon as we find what brings us joy, the energy that flows through us is so perfect, because when you're in joy, the energy flows the way it wants to flow, the way it can create most magnificently. Just live in the feeling of love. That's the essence of you. And the more we do that, the more we'll change the world. And that's where the world is heading.